Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere that probably shouldn't exist. You're going to find yourself stepping onto a forgotten trail buried deep in a forest where cell signals fade and maps politely give up. The air smells of damp bark and ancient rain, and the dirt under your shoes is almost suspiciously soft, like it's been waiting for your feet for a very long time. But that's not even the weird part. Because in this forest, the mushrooms glow. Not yellow, not orange, not vaguely radioactive green. Nope, blue. And not maybe if you squint blue, but soft lantern in the mist blue, fairy story blue, bioluminescent, low-key cosmic, softly pulsing in the dark kind of blue. It sounds magical. It is magical. It's also mildly unsettling, like the forest is trying to tell you something in a language made entirely out of colors and humidity. And fair warning, if you get lost out here, you probably won't survive on charm and granola bars alone. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. That always makes my day. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins with something small, almost forgettably small. A mushroom, maybe the size of your thumb, gently glowing at the edge of a mossy log. It catches your eye the way a lightning bug does, not bright enough to alarm, but curious enough to follow. Then another, then 10. Then a whole patch of them in clusters around the base of a twisted oak. It's like someone spilled starlight on the forest floor and forgot to clean it up. As you walk further in, the canopy thickens above, casting everything into deeper shade, and the mushrooms respond in kind, glowing brighter the darker it gets. Scientists would tell you this is bioluminescence, a chemical reaction of luciferin and oxygen inside the fungus. Fair enough. But here, it feels older than chemistry. Historians still argue whether ancient cultures stumbled across trails like this and believed them to be sacred, or if they built sacred places because they found trails like this. One lost scroll from 12th century Hungary even mentions a path of sky-colored lights. Where night listens and feet dream. No one took it seriously. Until now. You lean closer to inspect a cap. Its texture is smooth, a little wet, and it smells faintly of cinnamon. That's odd. Fungi aren't supposed to smell delicious. At least not in the sniff this while I disappear into folklore kind of way. You reach out and touch one. And nothing happens. At first, then a light breeze stirs, though the air had been perfectly still before, and all the mushrooms in a 5-foot radius pulse once, like synchronized breathing. You take a step back. Okay, maybe this isn't just pretty fungus. You glance behind you and realize the trail isn't behind you anymore, only ahead. That's the thing about the forgotten trail. It doesn't want to be followed. It wants to lead. You keep going, because what else are you going to do? Sit down and call a lift out here? Nope. So you walk. The further you go, the more the forest changes. It's not dramatic, no sudden shift, No fairy gate, but everything begins to feel curated, like the trees are letting you see only what they want you to see. Some ferns tilt subtly as you pass, realigning themselves. A vine swings gently like it just missed you on purpose. The mushrooms get bigger. Now they're up to your knees, then your thighs. And then you pass one the size of a coffee table, quietly glowing with an almost maternal warmth. They're not clustered anymore, either. They're lining the path like lanterns, forming an avenue of glowing blue caps. You can almost believe they're guiding you, or maybe hurting you. Just when you start wondering whether this is brilliant or deeply stupid, you hear something. A hum. Not from above, from below, and all around. The forest floor is humming. It's subtle, like distant wind chimes heard through 6 layers of soil, but it's there, and it matches the rhythm of your heartbeat just a little too well. You stop walking. The hum stops. You walk again. It resumes. A fringe theory from the 1920s claimed some mushrooms were neural filaments of Earth's subconscious and could respond to mental intent. The guy who wrote that also once claimed he married a ghost named Beatrice. So credibility's a little wobbly, but still, you're not ruling anything out right now. You pause again. The blue lights seem to flicker, almost impatiently. And then you see it, the trail narrows, moss thickening on either side. The glowing caps arch over the path like a tunnel, a long, soft green corridor with walls of light. You step inside. The air grows warmer. Somewhere far behind you, the forest lets out a long, exhaling sigh. The moss underfoot thickens like a green memory foam mattress from a civilization with much better priorities. You step, and it sighs. You pause, and it hugs your boots. It's starting to feel less like a trail and more like a welcome, albeit one written in fungus and dampness. You glance upward, and the sky is almost entirely gone. Branches knit above you in twisting loops. Vines dangle like soft chandeliers, and the only light comes from the blue glow beneath. The mushrooms pulse slowly now, in patterns that don't seem random. There's a rhythm like breath, or heartbeat, or some very slow song that only the forest knows how to hum. A few hundred years ago, European mapmakers had a habit of drawing dragons on unexplored land. Here be monsters, they'd scribble, with all the casual paranoia of someone who definitely did not want to find out what was actually there. But a lesser-known tradition. Some maps had faint dotted lines in forests, uncharted but purposeful. Theories range from hunting paths to druidic rituals. One disputed parchment in the British Museum even shows a series of blue dots labeled only as the Song Trail. Historians still argue whether that was a metaphor or a real path now lost to time. You wonder, not for the first time, if you've just stumbled onto it. You take out the crumpled parchment you found earlier in your pack, torn at the edges, water-stained, and smelling faintly of mothballs and cedar. It had come folded inside a copy of a poetry book you bought at a garage sale for 50 cents. You only opened the book because the title, Verses for the Leaves That Never Fall, sounded like something your weird dream self would write. On the back page, scrawled in greenish ink, was a partial map, not GPS compatible. Obviously, it didn't even have a compass rose, just a looping line through a wooded area, a few cryptic symbols, and a single phrase beneath it, "Walk until the earth glows back." Well, it definitely is. The trail narrows again, squeezing between two massive trees that seem older than logic. One of them bears a faint engraving, so worn down, it almost looks like moss. But you swear you can make out three small shapes that resemble stars, or maybe mushrooms, or maybe both. As you squeeze through, your fingers brush the bark. It's warm. You know how trees are supposed to feel, right? Cold, rough, barky. This one feels like it just woke up from a nap and hasn't quite decided if it likes you yet. The air shifts again. You swear it carries something floral, jasmine, lavender, old book pages. You're about to keep walking when you hear the crack. Snap. A single twig behind you. You whirl around. Nothing. Of course. But then, movement. Not quite in your line of sight, more like behind the idea of your head, if that makes sense. Like your thoughts caught a glimpse of something before your eyes could. You squint. A flash of silver. There, just beyond the trees. You consider turning back, but again, the trail behind you is gone, erased by shadows, moss, or something more polite and terrifying. You move forward, cautious now. Every step presses more deeply into moss that's beginning to glow faintly in response. The blue mushrooms seem to be syncing with your presence now. Their pulses align with your steps, and when you pause, you think no, you feel that they're listening. Not in a spooky horror movie way, more like an audience that's waiting for the story to get good. You step into another clearing. This one's smaller, less symmetrical. The trees here bend in curious shapes, as if they grew in the direction of old winds that no longer blow. Roots rise above ground like twisted hands. Ferns frame the mushrooms, their green now tinged with the faintest shimmer of electric blue. And right in the middle, an old stone pedestal, maybe waist high, covered in moss and etched with deep grooves that spiral around the top like a galaxy. It looks ancient, but also not abandoned. There's no debris, no fallen leaves, no spider webs, just that whispering wind, the pulse of mushrooms, and the feeling that you are somehow not the first person to get this far. There's something resting on top. You approach slowly. It's a locket. An actual, honest-to-goodness brass locket, delicate and flower engraved, sitting right in the center of the stone. You reach for it, half expecting a booby trap or some Indiana Jones rock swap situation. But nothing happens. You pick it up. It's warm. You open it. Inside, not a picture, but a pressed leaf. Thin, blue-veined, faintly glowing. And on the back flap, a name. Yours. Okay, now you're creeped out. You shut the locket and glance around. The mushrooms pulse a little faster, like they're chuckling softly. Remember that 17th century tale of a German noble who followed a trail of blue flowers and vanished for 300 years, only to reappear insisting he'd been gone an hour. That was dismissed as folklore. But now, you're not so sure. You pocket the locket and turn to leave the clearing. The path is waiting, and this time, you don't need to look for it. It's glowing just enough to say this way, please. You follow the glowing trail deeper into the woods, your boots now barely making a sound against the moss that has become impossibly thick and springy like the forest's version of memory foam, but with just the faintest smell of mint and wet bark. The mushrooms line your path with that same sleepy blue hue, bright enough to see, soft enough not to disturb. They've started to cluster more closely now, forming little alcoves and arches, like they're trying to impress you with their architectural ambition. Somewhere up above, the canopy thickens. You haven't seen the sky in a while. You assume it's still there, but at this point, who's to say? You wouldn't be entirely surprised if you looked up and found stars blinking beneath the leaves like forgotten Christmas lights. Then, it happens. The ground shifts. Just slightly, but enough that you stop. It's not like a quake or a tremor. It's more like the forest takes a breath beneath you. You step forward cautiously. The moss ripples, ever so gently, like a sheet pulled over a dreaming sleeper. Okay, that's new. You crouch and press your hand to the ground. The moss is warm, warmer than it should be, almost body temperature, and there's a rhythm beneath your palm, faint, subtle, but unmistakable. A heartbeat. Historians still argue whether the living earth myths of the old Baltic peoples were spiritual metaphors or lost scientific observations. One old myth from Estonia tells of a trail paved in breathing green that led travelers into the memories of the forest. Of course, most scholars wrote that off as poetic nonsense. But then again, you're literally feeling a heartbeat beneath a field of glow-in-the-dark mushrooms. So, the trail pulses once beneath you. You swear it wants you to follow faster. As you walk, the mushrooms begin to hum again, very faint. But you recognize the pattern. It's the same pulse as before, now translated into sound. A forest lullaby, no lyrics, just that low vibrating tone that threads its way into your chest and settles beside your own heartbeat like a sleepy roommate. You begin to notice something else shapes beneath the moss. Not bugs, not roots. Bones. Not bleached or dry, more like soft outlines, curved, woven, deliberate. You crouch and peel back some moss. Underneath a lattice of pale roots and what looks suspiciously like bone, except it isn't bone. Not quite. It's smoother, translucent, like fossilized coral or a very well-behaved lightning strike. The pattern stretches in both directions, under the trail, arching gently like ribs. You're walking on a spine. A very, very large one. Some legends from the Pacific Northwest speak of a forest whale, a creature that once flew and swam and sang through air and soil before lying down to become land. A literal whale of the woods. Folklore, sure. But what's beneath your feet right now? is not that. You stand. The moss covers it again, almost apologetically. You keep walking. The trees shift again. They're not just tall anymore. They're leaning, not toward the light, but toward the path. Each one arches slightly inward, as if bowing or maybe eavesdropping. Their trunks twist into elegant curves, bark etched with spiral grooves. One tree has a knot, shaped almost like an eye. It feels like it's watching. You wave at it, just in case. No response. Well, rude. Still, you feel oddly welcome. Not in a bake you cookies way, but in a you're being tolerated by very old beings kind of way, which is pretty good, all things considered. Suddenly, the trail opens into a small hollow, a glade. Really. You stop at its edge. The mushrooms here are enormous waist-high, umbrella-wide, some clustered in pairs like sleepy dancers mid-spin. The air buzzes slightly with quiet tension, not fear, more like anticipation. You step in. The ground shifts again this time. You see it. The moss ripples in a slow, outward wave from your footfall, as if the whole clearing just noticed you and is murmuring to its neighbors. In the center of the glade is something new. A tree. Not tall, not wide, but glowing. Unlike the blue mushrooms, this tree glows a soft green, almost jade-like, its bark pulsing gently like a sleeping dragon. Its leaves are translucent and seem to shift shapes when you look directly at them. You step closer. There's a low sound, not threatening, more like a deep cello note, played once and then let go. You reach out and touch the bark. It's warm. Of course it is. A story comes back to you, some weird footnote from a late-night documentary you watched half asleep. The Celts believed certain groves could read people who entered them, responding to emotion or intent. One 14th century monk even claimed to have found a tree that whispered the names of the lonely. Historians still argue whether that was metaphor, mental breakdown, or some early hallucinogenic mushroom incident. You press your hand against the tree. It pulses once beneath your palm. And you swear you hear your own name in the leaves. It's not spoken, more like folded into the rustle of foliage, as if your name had always been part of the breeze and you're only now noticing. You let go. You don't say anything. Because honestly, what's there to say? The tree doesn't ask for thanks. It just keeps glowing. The mushrooms seem to nod in approval. You glance back at the trail and realize it's glowing brighter again, inviting you forward. You leave the glade slowly, like someone backing away from royalty, half bowing, half hoping the tree doesn't change its mind and turn into something less polite. The mushrooms part gently around your feet, glowing in soft ripples with each step. The hum beneath you continues, like the forest's personal soundtrack has been set to mildly enchanted. The trail curves left and narrows into a slope, not steep, but steady. You're descending now, though the forest gives no hint of depth. The trees lean closer here, their branches knotted and braided like ancient hair, Vines loop down lazily, some bearing tiny flowers that blink with iridescent light, like someone crossbred orchids with LED fairy lights. You duck beneath a low-hanging branch and pause. Something ahead glimmers. Not like the mushrooms, not blue, not organic. This light reflects, metallic, structured. You move closer. It's a bridge, but not the kind you expect. This one stretches across a shallow dip in the forest, no more than 15 feet wide, but it looks like it's made from a blend of roots and bones. You blink. Yep, bones. Or bone-shaped something, delicately woven between thick tree roots that curl like frozen waves. The bones long, pale, polished form the arch, not a single nail or rope, just natural tension, holding everything together, like nature was given a Pinterest board on forest architecture and absolutely nailed it. You hesitate, then tap the bridge with your foot. It hums. Because of course it does. You step onto it. The bones don't creak. They sing faintly. Just one low note that rises and falls as your weight shifts. The hum beneath the moss earlier. This is a variation, a melody fragment, like the bridge is playing your footsteps in duet with the trail. Historians still argue whether structures like these in South American rainforests, root bridges and woven walkways formed naturally or were grown deliberately through ancient botanical techniques now lost to time. One explorer swore he saw a bone-laced root crossing in Papua New Guinea that pulsed with light. He was immediately discredited, but now, standing on this thing, you're rethinking that skepticism. You glance down. Beneath the bridge, no river, just dark. Not black, but infinite. Like the forest stops obeying physics under here. You drop a small twig through a gap between the bones and wait for the sound of it hitting the ground. It never comes. You walk faster. The bridge rises at the far end, curling slightly like the spine of a stretching cat, and deposits you gently back onto glowing moss. You glance back. The bridge is already receding, vines curling in like fingers. Right. Moving on, you pick up the pace. Here, the mushrooms grow in vertical spirals up the trees. Their glow forms patterns. Some look like constellations, others like runes. You wonder briefly if you're being watched again, but this time it doesn't feel ominous, more like being silently evaluated by a very curious librarian. Then a soft rustle behind you. Not the wind. This forest doesn't do wind. You turn and freeze. At the edge of your vision, between two leaning trunks, stands a figure. Tall, still, shimmering faintly. You squint. It's not cloaked. It's made of silver light, not harsh, but cool and moon-like. Its eyes are round, glowing like the mushrooms, but paler like silver coins held up to the night sky. It doesn't move, doesn't blink. It just watches. You blink, and it's gone. Classic forest move. But something's changed. The trail shifts direction. curling deeper into the woods with renewed urgency. The mushrooms brighten. A small gust of air swirls around your ankles like the forest just exhaled. You walk faster. Somewhere ahead, a branch creaks, but it sounds almost vocal, like a throat clearing. You arrive at a bend in the trail and see something carved into a tree trunk, a single word. Listen. That's it. You stop. And you do. At first, nothing. But slowly, the ambient hum resolves into something more structured. There's rhythm, there's tone. The mushrooms along the trail light up in sequence, left to right, right to left. Like forest Morse code, they're communicating. You can't read it, but you can feel it, like when you hear a song in another language and still know it's sad. You crouch and place your hand on the moss again. This time, no heartbeat. Just breath. The forest is breathing deeply, calmly. It wants you to keep going. You rise, heart thudding a little faster, and walk again. The forest narrows once more. And you realize this trail is not just taking you through the forest. It's teaching you how to walk within it, how to match its pace, how to listen to its breath, and maybe, just maybe, how to be part of whatever memory it's trying to preserve. You keep walking, now more carefully, like someone entering a room that's already in conversation. The moss beneath you stays soft, but you notice how your steps land more naturally in time with the pulsing light. You're not just following the trail anymore, you're part of it, and it feels oddly polite. As the path bends again, the trees lean in farther, forming almost an archway overhead. Their branches tangle like fingers, heavy with leaves that glitter faintly, not from dew, but from something else. Bioluminescent veins pulse through them like sleepy fireflies taking a nap. The mushrooms here have changed too. They're taller, paler, and their glow is gentler, more diffused, like candlelight filtered through milk glass. One of them sways slightly as you pass, though there's no wind. Then, just ahead, you see something strange. A formation rising out of the ground, half hidden by vines and luminous moss. You step closer. It's a structure, something between a sculpture and an altar. It's made entirely of intertwined roots, shaped into an intricate arc that stretches across the trail like a frozen wave. You trace your fingers across its surface, which is smooth in places and cracked in others. Some roots look petrified, others oddly flexible, like they might stretch if they felt like it. At the base of the arc, something glints. A tiny, rounded object. You crouch. It's a coin. Old, worn, almost featureless except for a single star etched into its center. You pocket it without really knowing why. The mushrooms pulse once, approvingly. Then, movement. A flicker to your left. You turn quickly. There, crouched low beneath the arc of roots, is something. Not quite human, not quite animal, somewhere in between. It's watching you with wide, glassy eyes, and for a moment, you wonder if it's part of the mushrooms, some hallucination conjured by light and shadow, but then it tilts its head, and you see it more clearly. A figure thin, robed in bark and moss. Its skin looks like lichen. Its hands end in long, root-like fingers. Its eyes are silver, rimmed with the faintest glow. It doesn't speak, but you feel something, or not fear, not even confusion. Recognition. Like this creature knows something about you. Not your birthday or your social security number, but something deeper. A memory, a shape. Then it raises one finger and presses it to where its mouth would be. Shh! You blink, and it's gone. Well, that's unsettling. You stand still for a moment, trying to decide if you're still sane. Then again, you've walked across a bone and root bridge, touched a tree that whispered your name, and followed mushrooms that clearly have performance anxiety. So sanity may not be your biggest concern anymore. You move forward, more aware now. The forest seems thicker, but not in a claustrophobic way. More like the walls of an old cathedral, close, reverent, full of meaning. You pass another tree, and this one is engraved more clearly. A spiral symbol. Simple, elegant. And right below it, a handprint. Not yours, not human. 3 long fingers etched deep into the bark. You press your own hand beside it. The tree hums. Then you hear it again. Whispers. Not from the leaves, from beneath. You crouch and touch the moss. The whispers rise, not words exactly, but something like memory, like a dream you almost remember, hanging just out of reach. The mushrooms around you begin to flicker, faster now, almost like they're excited or nervous. Then a low, vibrating tone washes through the trail, not sound, feeling, like someone plucked the string of an enormous instrument underground. Historians still argue whether certain singing stones found across Celtic Europe were ritual artifacts or natural phenomena. Some claimed that, when touched in silence, they'd echo the thoughts of the last person who did the same. Most mainstream scholars laugh that off. And yet this feels like the forest is holding on to echoes, not just sound but presence. Memory embedded in moss and root and light. You rise again and glance ahead. The trail splits. Left, the mushrooms grow brighter, tighter together, forming a narrow tunnel of blue fire. Right, the trail fades into a gentler glow, the moss parting into a wider path. You hesitate. Then the coin in your pocket warms slightly. You pull it out. The star on its surface is glowing faintly now, and the heat pulls gently left. You follow. The tunnel narrows. The mushrooms grow taller. And then you pass beneath another root arch. This one hums in a low harmony with your steps. The sound is almost vocal, like a forgotten choir murmuring something you can't quite translate. As you emerge, the trail dips suddenly, just a few steps downward, but it's enough to make the forest feel deeper. more hidden, more sacred. The trees thin slightly, revealing what looks like a stone platform ahead, ringed with mushrooms and carpeted in soft moss. You step onto it. The moment your foot touches the platform, every mushroom in the circle flickers at once and then begins to glow brighter. And you realize the forest is listening. And whatever's about to happen next, it's expecting you to remember something too. You stand still in the center of the moss-covered platform, trying to act cool, like this kind of thing happens to you all the time. It doesn't, obviously, but the forest doesn't need to know that. The mushrooms form a perfect ring around you, tall ones, short ones, ones that lean like they're trying to whisper secrets to their fungal neighbors. Their glow synchronizes now, pulsing in and out like a gentle breath. Then the temperature shifts. Not colder, just quieter, somehow. The air thickens slightly, the way it does right before a snowfall. Sound dulls, and time feels hesitant. From the edge of the circle, something moves. Not fast, not dramatic, just there, and then closer. It's the figure again. The one with silver eyes. Except now, you see more clearly. It isn't cloaked. It's feathered. An owl, huge, silent, perched impossibly still atop a low stump just beyond the mushroom ring. Its feathers shimmer faintly, like it's dipped in stardust, and its eyes hold none of the wise and cuddly energy you see on book covers. These eyes are ancient, and they see. You try to speak. You can't. Not from fear. Your voice just doesn't seem welcome here. The owl tilts its head, and in the silence, something clicks. Not in your ears, in your chest, like a forgotten drawer inside you just opened. And the memory spills out. A campfire, a journal, a half-buried story about this forest from when you were a child. You didn't believe it, of course, but it stayed with you. About how some owls weren't birds at all, but guardians of forgotten knowledge, watchers of thresholds, and sometimes, just sometimes, they'd appear to travelers who weren't just walking a trail, but becoming part of it. You blink. The owl is still watching. And then it speaks. Not aloud. Not in your head, either. It speaks around you. A voice like leaves falling in reverse, like time hiccuping. Do you remember how to see backward, it asks. Which, sure, totally normal owl question. You don't answer, mostly because you don't know how. But something about the question lingers. See backward. Not turn around, not look behind, but see backward. As in, through time. You look down. The moss beneath your feet shifts. It starts to fade not away, but backward, becoming thinner, younger, greener. The stone platform beneath it emerges in full detail. There are carvings, circles, stars, a single line spiraling inward like a galaxy. And then you understand, this platform is not a meeting place. It's a mirror. Not one that shows faces, but paths, choices, moments that echo. Historians still argue whether Neolithic stone circles served as astronomical calculators, ritual centers, or mnemonic devices. One fringe theory proposes they were memory chambers, places where people returned to recall ancient stories by physically walking them. Laughed out of most journals, but now you slowly step along the spiral path carved into the platform. Each step sends a tiny pulse of light through the mushrooms, which begin to glow brighter as you reach the center. At the spiral's core lies something unexpected. A book. Thin. Wrapped in bark. You kneel and open it. The pages aren't made of paper, but soft, fibrous leaves, inked with dark green symbols you don't recognize but understand anyway. Not because you've learned them, because you're remembering them. One page shows an owl with stars in its wings. Another a traveler on a glowing trail. Another a hand pressed to moss. And another, you, standing here, right now, in this exact circle. You look up. The owl is gone. Of course it is. But in its place, floating gently in the center of the ring, is a single feather. Silver. Still warm to the touch. You slip it into your pocket next to the coin. It doesn't hum, but it settles, like it belongs there. You step back off the platform, and the mushrooms dim once more. The trail behind you disappears. The one ahead glows brighter than ever. You start walking again. The trees part gently, making way. The moss thickens in places, thins in others, guiding your steps like a whispered suggestion. Eventually, you come to a wide tree with a hollowed-out center. You crouch and peek inside. A nest, but not for eggs. Inside, stacked neatly in spirals, are feathers, coins, stones etched with spirals, and dozens of tiny bark-bound books. Just like the one you found. A library of memories, guarded by owls and mushrooms and time. You smile, because now you know. The trail is not just a place. It's a recorder, and you're being written into it. You walk away from the tree library feeling a little like you've just signed a guest book with your soul. The forest welcomes you back into its rhythm like you never left. Every step forward now feels acknowledged. Like you're not simply walking through this place, you're being hosted by it. Ahead, the trail curves into a low mist, lit gently from below by clusters of blue mushrooms. Their glow has shifted again, now slower, deeper, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming peacefully. You notice the air is thicker here, not oppressive, but soft, like silk drifting just above your skin. You lift your hand and pass it through the fog. It parts easily, and you're pretty sure you hear it sigh. And then, something odd. The mushrooms start to hum again, but not just randomly. There's a pattern. You crouch beside one particularly tall cap and listen. It's subtle, but definitely they're a low tonal sequence, rising and falling in intervals, Like music, you listen longer. No lyrics, but there's emotion. You'd swear this one is sad, the next one hopeful, another a bit smug. Honestly, that one may have opinions. And the sounds they're talking to each other. Mushroom 1, a low note, maybe contemplative. Mushroom 2, a quick 3-beat flutter in response, like, yeah, we know. Mushroom 3, nothing for a moment, then a deep rumble, followed by a slow pulse of light that ripples outward to the others. You realize they're communicating not just with you, but with each other. You lie down carefully on the moss and listen, ako. It takes a minute, but soon the hums and tones wrap around your ears like a lullaby woven from whale song and synthesizer static. It's beautiful, it's ancient, and it's a little bit ridiculous when one of them lets out a tone that sounds suspiciously like a flatulent oboe. You laugh quietly. The forest lets you. Historians still argue whether early shamans who claimed to hear the voices of the earth were engaging in metaphor or actual perception of biophonic signals, subtle sound vibrations created by plants, fungi, and even soil under certain atmospheric conditions. Most modern science shrugs this off as poetic nonsense. But you, lying here listening to mushrooms have an existential jam session, might beg to differ. Suddenly, a flicker. Not light, wing. Something darts between the branches above. You sit up. It's the moth again. The same shimmering creature from earlier, but this time, it doesn't flit away. It hovers, then turns and waits. An invitation. You follow. The moth moves slower this time, as if aware you've leveled up a bit. It weaves gently through hanging moss, past gnarled trunks and sleepy blue glows, eventually guiding you into a tighter part of the forest. The trees close in, but the mushrooms grow more abundant here, not less. They rise along the sides of trunks like elegant staircase banisters. They drape over branches like soft chandeliers, and they continue their quiet conversation, humming softly as you pass, like an audience whispering during a concert. Then, the moth pauses at the edge of a new clearing. You step into it slowly and stop. At the center stands a statue, or so you think until it shifts. It's tall, spindly, shaped like a cross between a heron and a violin. Its body is covered in bark-like plates that shimmer with silver blue light. No eyes, no mouth, just presence. It turns towards you slowly. Doesn't move any closer. Doesn't need to. You feel it immediately, like a song tuned precisely to your heartbeat. Not threatening, not warm either. Just correct. It raises a branch-like arm and gestures toward the trees around the clearing. And then you see them. Hundreds of glowing mushrooms, tall, wide, curled, smooth, arranged in perfect lines and arcs. Not random. not chaotic. Musical. It's a mushroom orchestra, each shaped for sound, not sight. You stare. The creature tilts its head, and suddenly, the mushrooms play. No visible strings, no conductor, just resonance. A wave of tones swells from the clearing's edge and rolls over you. You recognize the pattern echoes of the trail, the whispers, even the owl's silent question. And then you realize something even stranger. You understand what it means. It's not language, not exactly. It's remembrance. The trail is remembering you, storing you, cataloging the shape of your presence, the sound of your thoughts, the arc of your journey. You don't belong to this forest, but for this moment it belongs to you. You don't speak, you bow. The figure bows back just once, then fades. Literally, fades into spores, which drift upward and scatter through the trees. You step back slowly, the music still echoing in your ears. The moth waits until you've turned, then flutters ahead once more, leading you back to the path. The mushrooms dim as you pass, like lights going out at the end of a concert. And the trail hums again. Just one note, but it sounds a lot like well done. The trail softens beneath your steps again, a warm hush settling into the moss as you follow the shimmering moth. It no longer flits like an erratic dancer, now it glides, purposeful and smooth, a tiny comet streaking ahead in slow motion. You feel different, too, lighter, calmer, like something has aligned inside you that you didn't know was crooked. The trees around you shift gradually into new shapes, taller now, thinner, their bark a silvery gray, veined with green light. Their roots curl above ground, like the fingers of sleeping giants. And as you walk, you begin to notice something etched along their trunks. Symbols. Not random graffiti or lazy initials. These are careful spirals, arrows, stars, and what appear to be eyes. At first, you assume they're decorative. Then one of them blinks. You freeze. It blinks again. Not threateningly, just there. Watching. You move cautiously past, but the blinking eyes don't follow you. They simply observe, embedded in bark like curious sentinels. A few even wink, which, honestly, you weren't emotionally prepared for. As you round a bend in the trail, the moth pauses. You glance down. The ground here is different. No moss, no soil, just stone, slick and dark like obsidian, stretching into a perfect circle, surrounded by glowing blue mushrooms. They pulse gently, like they're waiting for something. And in the center, a pedestal made entirely of interwoven vines and bones, some animal, some not so much. You try not to think about it. Lying atop the pedestal is a small orb. You step closer and peer in. Oh, it's not glass, it's mushroom cap, but hollowed out. And inside, suspended like a memory in jelly, is a tiny silver moth wing spread, body still. A memorial, a warning. You reach out. Instinctively, your fingertip brushes the cap's surface, and the air around you shifts. Not just the breeze, everything. The forest dims, like someone drew a curtain over the moon. The light of the mushrooms turns cool and still, and then you're not on the trail anymore. You're somewhere else. Same forest, yes, but different. The trees are younger. The path is thinner. And all around you, the air vibrates with laughter, voices, people. You spin. There, along the edges of the glowing trail, are figures. Not modern hikers. Wanderers. Draped in cloaks made of leaves and woven light, each holding a tiny lantern shaped like a mushroom cap. They walk with purpose, nodding to one another in solemn silence. And just ahead of you, sitting on a smooth stone, is a girl. Teenage, barefoot, hair braided with ivy and beads. She's sketching. The mushrooms, the moths, the trail, everything. You move toward her, but no one sees you. Not her. Not the travelers. Not the tiny moths that zip past like wayward starlight. You're not really there. You're seeing backward, just like the owl asked. Historians still argue whether certain naturally hallucinogenic fungi were used in ritual practices not to induce ecstasy, but to invoke time-sight brief glimpses into ancestral memory through the fungal network beneath sacred groves. It's a controversial theory, mostly because, well, mushrooms. But the way this moment hums in your bones, you're starting to wonder if they were onto something. The girl sketches faster now, then pauses, looks up, and stares right at you. For a heartbeat, the whole forest stops breathing. Then she smiles, lifts her sketchbook, and shows you the page. It's you, standing right there. In that exact moment, you blink, and you're back. The pedestal, the orb, the quiet. No more voices. No sketching girl. Just the moth, still fluttering ahead, as if nothing happened. You touch your pocket, half expecting to find the drawing tucked inside. Instead, your hand brushes something else. A smooth stone. Flat, etched with a tiny symbol. A star inside a spiral. You didn't put it there. You glance around. The mushrooms flicker once quickly, then settle. Whatever just happened, the forest knew it would. And maybe it's not the first time. Maybe you're not the first traveler to walk this path, to hear the songs, to see backward and forward and sideways in the dark. But tonight, you're the one the trail is telling. And you're beginning to understand. This place doesn't record history. It remembers stories, especially the ones that haven't finished yet. You keep walking, though the trail no longer feels like a path you're following. It feels like a thread being spun beneath your feet, a soft, glowing thread woven by memory sound, and the hush of blue-lit silence. The trees seem even taller now, arching together overhead like they're leaning in to listen. Then the forest opens. Not wide, but upward. You step into a clearing where the canopy thins just enough to show you the stars. Not a few dots through branches, this is a full sky reveal. The Milky Way spills across the heavens like powdered sugar shaken from a dream, every detail glowing in impossible clarity. The mushrooms here are smaller, quieter, but they've arranged themselves in deliberate clusters, echoing the exact arc of stars above. You step back and realize something absurd. The forest is mirroring the night sky. The mushrooms are placed in positions that replicate constellations. Not exactly, some are shifted, some larger or dimmer, but the intention is there, a mycological map of the galaxy. You crouch, heart thudding in that weird, excited, nervous way you get when you realize nature has been doing art behind your back. You walk along the trail, checking each glowing patch. Orion, Cassiopeia, the Pleiades, though, in this version, they're spiraled into a tighter cluster, like the mushrooms are whispering secrets about how they actually look. Who taught the mushrooms constellations? Did someone plant them? Did they choose? Theories exist, of course. Historians still argue whether ancient woodland civilizations arranged natural elements to reflect their cosmology, or whether people simply saw cosmic patterns in nature out of poetic instinct. It's the age-old battle between deliberate design and accidental beauty. Either way, standing here in a clearing where fungus mimics starlight, you kind of don't care who's right. It's just beautiful. And then you notice something else. Your shadow. It's not cast by the stars. It's cast by the mushrooms. They glow upward, soft but strong, creating silhouettes that flicker ever so slightly, not with your movement, but with your thoughts. You test it. Think about stillness. Your shadow pauses. Think about laughter, it lifts its arms slightly. Think about fear, it wavers, then steadies again. These mushrooms aren't just mimicking stars, they're responding to you. You lie down in the moss, your head gently cradled by a pillow of tiny caps. The sky above, the sky below. For a moment, you are held between constellations. You think back earlier on the trail, to the owl, the spiral stone platform, the music, the girl sketching you. All of it leads here, not to a destination, but to this alignment. You, the forest, the stars, the map under your body, the sky over your breath. And at the center of it all, something familiar softly fluttering down beside you. The moth. But this time, it lands right on your shoulder. Its glow is softer now, pulsing slowly, in rhythm with your breath. You wonder, is this what the trail wanted to show you all along? That the mushrooms didn't just glow blue because it's cool and Instagrammable, but because they're listening, learning, reflecting, mirroring the sky in a secret ritual that you've now been invited into. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the moth. The mushrooms nearest you shimmer slightly in acknowledgement. And in the center of the clearing, something rises. Not from the ground, but from the air. Particles of blue light drifting upward in a lazy spiral. At first, you think it's fireflies. Then you see their spores, glowing spores, carrying pieces of starlight back up to the night. You laugh gently, half in awe, half in disbelief. Because what kind of forest launches spores like shooting stars? This one, apparently. You look up, and in that moment, a meteor arcs across the sky. Long, slow, bright enough to make the mushrooms dim in reverence. You close your eyes and wish for nothing. Because what could possibly top this? When you open them again, the moth is gone. The spores have vanished. But the trail remains, just a little brighter than before. You rise and continue on, not because you're searching, but because the path is still humming beneath your steps. And it wants you to know the story isn't done yet. The trail winds tighter now, coiling like a fern unfurling in reverse. You duck under low-hanging branches and step over twisted roots that feel just a little too deliberate in their placement, like the forest is playing with you, testing your rhythm. You keep pace. The glow of the mushrooms has softened, moving into a calmer blue-green hue, less nightclub, more lullaby. And with it, the silence thickens, not ominous, but cozy, like a heavy blanket wrapped around a tired thought. You reach a grove of particularly wide trees, their trunks so thick it would take 5 of you to hug one completely. Their bark is layered with vertical grooves like ancient books waiting to be opened. In fact, one of them is open. Not literally, of course, but carved into its side is a rectangular panel about the size of a large door, and on that panel, a mural. It's old and fading, but you can still make out some of the images. There's a tree huge, central, and surrounded by smaller ones. A blue arc hovers above them, and beneath it all, a line of mushroom symbols, etched like notes in a forgotten song. You reach out to touch the grooves. They're warm. Not because of sunlight, there is no sunlight. Just warm. And when your fingers brush the central trunk in the mural, something shifts again. You hear it before you see it. A low, resonant chime, like someone struck a crystal bell in another dimension. The trees hum back in response. And then, on the far side of the grove, a second panel glows faintly. Another mural. You walk over. This one's different. It shows people small, stylized, but unmistakably human, kneeling beside mushrooms and holding their hands out to beams of light descending from the canopy. No faces, just outlines. And between them, a moth. Not flying, but floating above a circle of mushrooms. You start to piece it together. This isn't art for art's sake. It's a record, an offering, maybe a ritual. Historians still argue whether pre-modern forest societies engaged in mycological rites, ceremonies involving fungi, not as food or medicine, but as spiritual conduits. Most dismiss it as projection, lumping it in with Bigfoot sightings and ley line theories. But standing here, in this ancient grove of glowing symphonies and whispering murals, it feels a lot less far-fetched. You continue walking, and the murals continue, each one leading to the next, like panels in a giant comic strip of forest mythology. One shows a great storm lightning crashing through the trees while the mushrooms glow brighter, not dimmer. Another shows owls, dozens of them, lined up in perfect circles around what looks like a star map carved into moss. And another, a girl, teenage again, familiar. This time, she's not drawing. She's standing in a mushroom ring, holding a feather in one hand and a stone in the other. Her eyes are closed. The forest around her glows with starlight and spores. You pause. It's her, the sketchbook girl. You blink and the mural changes. Not wildly, but subtly. Her head tilts, the feather lifts slightly. A wink of motion where there should be none. You step back, heart thudding just a little too hard for bedtime. And then, from deep within the grove, you hear a soft tap. Not threatening, not loud. Just enough to make you turn. There, on a stump, lies another object. You walk toward it. It's a lantern. Not lit. But you know what to do. You pull the silver feather from your pocket and touch it to the top. The lantern flares to life not with fire, but with mushroom glow. A gentle blue radiance floods the grove, and the murals shimmer briefly, like sighing in their sleep. The forest knows you now, knows your light. You lift the lantern, and just like that, a new trail appears. Not carved, not stomped down, just revealed. The moss recedes. The mushrooms align, and the air shifts forward, beckoning. As you take your first step down this new trail, the murals fade behind you. Not erased, just archived. You glance back one last time, and you swear the girl in the mural smiles. The new trail curves softly, as though hesitant to fully reveal itself, like a secret whispered by moonlight. Your glowing lantern swings gently from your hand, casting pale blue circles on the moss with every step. Around you, the forest seems to listen, not with ears, but with everything. It holds its breath each time your foot lifts and exhales each time it lands. After a short distance, you notice the sound again. That subtle, breathy hum. Only now, it's more distinct. Not just humming in harmony. You pause. There's no visible source, just the trees and the mushrooms and the echo of quiet music in the air. You hold up the lantern. The glow pulses in response, sending out waves of light that ripple through the forest like sonar. And one by one, little patches of ground begin to shimmer. You step closer. They're not mushrooms this time. They're stones. Flat, circular, arranged like stepping stones down the middle of the trail. Each one glows faintly and carries a carved symbol, some stars, some leaves, some shapes you don't quite recognize. You tap one with your foot. It sings. Not loudly, just a soft ping, like a chime caught in a dream. You tap the next. A different tone, slightly higher. You smile. Because now you get it. It's a melody trail. You step from stone to stone, each footfall creating a note, a lullaby built by your path. You can't resist playing with it. A scale, a rhythm, a clumsy little song that sounds like something a sleepy forest spirit might hum while brushing their hair with a twig. The stones approve. They glow brighter with each note. You keep walking now, playing the trail as much as following it. Eventually, the stones stop. But ahead is something new. A ring of trees so tightly woven their branches form a natural dome. The canopy curves above like a cathedral ceiling made from bark and shadow. At the center, a pool. It's not water. It's clearer than water. More like liquefied glass. You kneel at its edge. The surface doesn't reflect the trees above. It reflects stars. Perfect constellations, all arranged in spiraling motion. And when you look closely, you see yourself, not just your face, but you, walking the trail, stepping on glowing stones, holding the lantern, touching the murals. You're seeing your memories. The pool is remembering you. You touch it, and the stars ripple. The scene shifts. Now it shows the sketching girl again, this time older, her hair longer, her clothes different. She's drawing with a strange glowing ink, and the page in her hand has a spiral, a symbol you've seen before. Then she looks up, right at you. Again. But not through time this time. It's as if she sees into you. The pool flashes, and the image changes. Now stars, then a moth, then a mushroom, and finally, a trail. This trail ending at a wide, dark tree with a hollow center. The tree pulses once, then the pool stills. Historians still argue whether sacred groves functioned as mnemonic devices, natural libraries where landscape, sound, and ritual encoded oral traditions so precisely that memory itself could be retrieved through the body. Some laugh it off as pseudo-archaeology, but the way your chest tightens at the sight of your story rippling through starlit water, hard to laugh that off. You rise. The dome of trees opens slightly ahead, revealing a narrow archway made entirely from woven branches and glowing lichen. You duck through and stop, because now you're at the edge of a canyon. Not wide, but deep. And down below, the forgotten trail continues, twisting and turning through layers of mist, mushroom rings, and glittering spores. But there are no steps, no bridge, no ladder. Just a gentle breeze and a series of floating stones, mossy, glowing, suspended in midair, each one bobbing slightly, like waiting for your next move. You look at the lantern in your hand. It flickers just once, then steadies. You nod, because of course, you're going to walk across floating mushroom stones over a glowing canyon of memory. Obviously, you take a breath because that's what you do when you're about to step into midair and then place one foot onto the first floating stone. It holds, barely. It wobbles in that way that instantly makes your stomach do a synchronized backflip with your brain, but it doesn't fall. It's like standing on a trampoline that has taken a solemn vow not to betray you. You lift your other foot. Now you're standing entirely on a mushroom-grown stone, floating above a canyon lit from below by blue glow and suspended dust motes that drift like lazy constellations. No pressure. You glance behind. The forest waits patiently, and ahead, the stones form a twisting path over the chasm. You take the next step, then another. Each stone hums beneath you a slightly different tone each time, like an instrument tuning itself to your motion. The hums echo upward and outward, bouncing off canyon walls that shimmer with moss and root and what looks suspiciously like carved faces. You don't stop to examine them, mostly because the stones are floating and you'd rather not be distracted by moss ghosts. About halfway across, the trail widens into a large platform, circular, stable, and hovering above the deepest part of the canyon. At the center, a tree stump, flat and carved with the same spiral symbol that seems to keep showing up everywhere you go. You approach it. There's something lying on top. A book, made of bark. Literally slender sheets of bark bound together with silver thread. You open it slowly. The pages whisper when they move, like the paper is exhaling centuries of stories in your hands. The contents, drawings, hundreds of them, all glowing faintly in shades of blue, green, and white. Moths, stars, mushrooms, lanterns, sketches of trees that look suspiciously like the ones behind you. Even your lantern appears in one illustration, glowing in a young girl's hand. She's standing next to what looks like you. The resemblance is a little unnerving. You flip through more pages and then freeze, because here's a sketch of the floating stones and you're on them right now, looking at the book, in the drawing. So, yes, the trail apparently has a side gig as a surreal autobiography. You gently close the book, heart thumping in that weird way that's not fear, but awe, and also just a hint of what even is reality anymore. You look up. The trail continues. More floating stones, now sloping downward into the mist like a slow-motion waterfall. You step forward. As you descend, the light begins to shift less blue, more gold. The moss starts to sparkle, not brightly, but enough that each footstep feels like it's brushing against stardust. The temperature grows warmer. You catch the scent of something familiar, Something that smells like rain on dry leaves and pine sap warmed by sunlight. Eventually, the floating stones touch down. You're in another clearing, but this one is unlike any before. It's wide, ringed with trees that glow faintly from within, like lanterns with bark for skin. The ground here is soft, thick with bluegrass and curled petals. Fireflies drift lazily in pairs, tracing loops like sleepy figure skaters. At the center, a stone table. And sitting at that table, yes, her, the girl, older now, maybe a few years, but unmistakably the same. She's sketching again, flipping between pages, her glowing pen moving as if it already knows what she's going to draw. You step closer. Still, she doesn't look up. Instead, she speaks softly. I was wondering when you'd arrive. You open your mouth to say something, anything, but she raises one hand gently. Don't try, just listen. You sit. She pushes the sketchbook toward you. You look down and see pages filled with stars, but not just constellation star stories. Diagrams of how certain stars align with mushroom rings during solstice, notes about how spores are released only on specific lunar cycles, and between it all, one phrase written over and over. They count the stars so we don't forget the sky. You look up. She finally meets your gaze. They whisper so we remember, she says, because stories are soft things. They vanish when no one listens. You nod, because somehow you understand now. This trail wasn't just built to be followed. It was built to remind. Historians still argue whether ancient knowledge could be passed not through writing or language, but through deep interaction with natural rhythm like a living archive, meant to be walked, breathed, felt. Many dismiss it, but they've probably never been invited to dinner by a forest librarian. The girl stands. Come on, she says. There's more. Of course there is. The trail's not done yet. You follow her. Because by now, saying no to the forest feels like trying to outstare the moon. She leads you past the glowing table, down a narrow trail lined with tall, still trees whose trunks have twisted ever so slightly to lean inward like they've gathered for a secret meeting and decided not to tell the wind. The girl hums as she walks. It's a soft melody, familiar, and then you realize it's the tune you made when you stepped on those floating stones. She'd heard it. Maybe the whole forest had. Soon, the trees part again. But this time, instead of another clearing, you step into a shallow basin. The land slopes down gently, like a giant bowl carved into the forest floor. At the center, a tree. The tree, the one you saw in the pool of memories. Enormous, older than old. It doesn't glow, it absorbs light, like it's holding a night sky inside its bark. Its roots spiral outward in wide circles, forming paths and patterns. In the spaces between them, mushrooms grow in clusters shaped like letters. No, numbers. You crouch. You look again. They're not just numbers, they're coordinates. Celestial ones, mapped into the forest floor by bioluminescent fungus. The girl kneels beside you. They call it the counting tree, she says, brushing her fingers across the moss. It remembers every star it's ever seen. You whisper, it counts them. She nods. But why? She doesn't answer. Instead, she pulls something from her satchel, a tiny vial filled with glowing blue spores. She pours them carefully into the roots of the tree. The forest holds its breath. Then, the tree shivers. Not in wind, not in movement, but in feeling. A deep, slow vibration hums through the ground, into your bones, your teeth, your thoughts. Above, the canopy parts like curtains on a cosmic stage, and every star visible above begins to glow brighter. You're not sure if it's real or just perception playing dress-up, but it's beautiful. You and the girl sit in silence as the tree pulses once more. And then you notice something astonishing. Each pulse of the tree lines up with a specific star twinkle above. It's counting them. In real time. Historians still argue whether pre-technological societies could have accurately tracked stellar motion without tools. But the evidence here is hard to argue with. A tree that pulses in sync with celestial bodies, not something you typically find in mainstream textbooks. You lean back on your hands, overwhelmed but calm. The girl speaks again, softer now. This trail, it's part of something older, something planted by watchers, listeners, rememberers. You turn to her. Are you one of them? She smiles, but doesn't answer. Instead, she reaches into her sketchbook and tears out a page. On it, a drawing of you. Lantern in hand. Mouth slightly open in awe. She tucks it into your palm. To remember that you were here, she says. You slide it into your pocket like it's made of gold. The wind picks up not loud, just curious. And in it, you hear whispers. Not voices, not language, but meaning. The mushrooms are glowing brighter now, aligning their shapes along the tree roots. They spiral outward, forming one last map. The girl points. That's your way forward. You look down. The trail continues this time, not as floating stones or mossy paths, but as a spiral staircase carved into the base of the counting tree. It descends into soft, blue-lit shadow. You rise. Lantern in one hand, sketch tucked safely in your coat. The girl watches you, serene. And just as you begin to step downward, she says one last thing. They say the trail forgets those who rush, so take your time. The stars aren't going anywhere. You smile, nod, and begin to descend. One slow step at a time. Each stair hums with your footfall. The tree above pulses one last time. And then the spiral wraps you in shadow. The descent winds slow and wide, like a spiral staircase dreamed up by a sleepy architect who loved circles more than gravity. You trail your hand along the inside wall. It's smooth, almost polished, but warm like sunlit stone, even though no sun reaches this far. Your lantern swings gently, its glow pulsing in harmony with each step, not because it's trying to be dramatic, just because everything down here has rhythm. Even your thoughts feel slower, softer, syncing with the pace of the tree. You pass alcoves in the walls, natural hollows filled with roots curled like sleeping animals. One cradles a nest of dried moss and owl feathers. Another holds a half-buried stone tablet with spirals, stars, and yes, tiny mushrooms etched around the edge. You pause and kneel. There's something scratched beneath the carvings. To count is to care. To care is to remember. You whisper it aloud. The wall answers. Just a soft vibration, like a tree nodding. Farther down, the air grows cooler, damp but clean, smells like stories that haven't been told yet. You hear water somewhere below, a gentle drip echoing like a ticking clock made of clouds. Eventually, you reach a chamber. It's circular, of course. At the center is a pool much smaller than the last one, but perfectly still. The water is dark and clear, like a mirror waiting to confess something. You kneel beside it and hold your lantern over the surface. The glow reflects, and then it shifts. Your reflection moves, but you didn't. It's you, but not now. You in another forest, a younger version, looking up at stars, counting with your fingers and losing track after 13. You in a library, tracing constellations in an old book. You under a blanket, asking someone older, do the stars ever fall out? The pool is remembering you, not just the trail. You lean closer, mesmerized, and suddenly the water ripples not from above, but below. Something stirs. You hold still, but not from fear. It feels like the moment before a memory returns, right at the edge of waking. A glow rises from the depths. Blue, gold, white. And with it a shape. Not a creature. Not a person. A seed, encased in crystal, floating upward slowly like it has all the time in the world. You reach into the pool. The water isn't cold. It's thick like starlight had a temperature. You lift the seed. It pulses in your hand, matching the heartbeat of the tree above. You don't know what it is, but you know what it's for. To carry, to plant, to remember. Historians still argue whether sacred objects were used in forest rituals to seed memory across time, not with writing, but through placement, repetition, and symbolic resonance. Some think it's wishful thinking, but they probably haven't cradled a glowing forest seed forged in the language of stars. You tuck the crystal seed into a pouch on your coat. It pulses once, then stills, content. Across the chamber, you see a door. Not carved, not placed. Just there. Woven of roots and light. You walk toward it. And as you pass through, something changes. The air shifts. You step not into another part of the forest, but into the sky. The ground falls away behind you. Above, the constellations stretch wide and bright, but there's no wind, no danger, just you, suspended in space as if the forest wanted to show you what it sees. Below you, like a living map, the entire trail glows, spiraling through the trees, across the canyon, around the counting tree, and finally into this chamber. Each step you took is now a glowing marker. Each pause, each breath, a tiny dot of light. The forest remembers your journey. And now you do, too. The stars don't blink. They pulse slow, steady, like the forest breathing out a lullaby it's been humming for 1,000 years. You float in the center of it all, not flying exactly, but held like a leaf caught in a perfect updraft. Your lantern dims gently on its own, sensing perhaps that it's no longer the brightest thing in the room. Below you, the glowing trail continues its spiral until it vanishes into the deep green folds of the ancient forest. And then, like dew beating on a leaf, lights begin to form around you, tiny orbs, blue and white, drifting from the dark. They dance around your fingers, gather in your hair. One lands on your shoulder and hums. You glance at it. It flickers once, twice, then speaks. Not in words, but in memory. You see the girl, the one from the drawings, only now she's older still and standing among a crowd. Not humans, not quite. Shapes with bark-like skin and eyes like polished stone. They're listening to her as she gestures toward the sky, tracing stars with her glowing pen. She's teaching them, sharing the story. You realize she planted the story, the same way you're meant to now. The light on your shoulder hums again, and you look around as all the orbs spiral slowly inward. They form a circle in the sky, constellations rearranged into a symbol you've seen carved on stones, glowing on mushrooms, etched into bark. The spiral, the whisper, the trail. It's not just a path, it's a cycle, a retelling, a memory passed down, not in ink or voice, but in experience. You blink and you're back in the clearing with the counting tree. The night has deepened. The air is cool and still. You're seated beneath the great canopy, the seed still pulsing softly in your coat. The girl is gone. But beside you, in the moss, is her sketchbook, open to a blank page and waiting. You pick it up. Your hand hesitates for just a breath. And then you begin to draw. Not perfectly, not quickly, but truthfully. The spiral staircase, the pool of stars, the blue glow mushrooms and floating stones, the tree that counts. You draw it all, because that's the way the forest speaks. Not through voice, but through those who remember. The night passes slowly around you. The forest never truly sleeps. It sighs and sways and hums, its breath caught in the canopy and spilled gently over the moss. The counting tree pulses once, just once, as if to say, "Good, you listened." Historians still argue whether myth and memory can live in the body, whether a person can become a vessel for stories so old they predate language. Most say no, but you're not so sure anymore. Not with the way the sketchbook fits your hand, not with the way your heart beats to the rhythm of glowing roots. You stand at last. The seed glows in your pocket. The lantern flickers, and far in the trees, a new path opens. Softly lit, moss-lined, quiet. It doesn't call your name, but it waits, because stories, real ones, never end. They just spiral forever forward. You stand there for a while, just breathing. The path ahead glows gently, but it doesn't hurry you. Nothing here ever does. The forest is patient. It has always been. It will always be. A breeze stirs the leaves above. The sound is soft, like a lullaby half remembered, sung by trees that learned their rhythm from the stars themselves. Your eyes drift closed, just for a moment. You feel the memory settle not in your mind, but deeper. In your bones, in your steps, in the quiet. The story you followed tonight won't fade, because now it lives with you, not as words or pages, but as the quiet knowledge that some places are made to remember. Some trails are built not to be walked, but to be carried. You turn slowly, letting the hush of the forest wrap around your shoulders like a warm shawl. The mushrooms glow gently at your feet. The trees stand guard, not watching, just present. A lantern hums softly in your hand. The seed pulses in your coat. And all around you, the stars hold still, just long enough for you to notice. Tonight, you counted them. And maybe, just maybe, they counted you back. Now rest. Let the weight fall from your limbs. Let the hush soak into your chest. Let the spiral hold you. Because you made it to the end of the trail. And everything is quiet now. Perfectly, beautifully quiet.